Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State. Today, we are addressing your biggest questions surrounding Penn State football for 2025. Listen, it's March. We're waiting on spring ball to get started. Winter workouts are underway. The recruiting trail is hot for 2026, 2027, all that good stuff. But there are plenty of huge questions that you, the fans, have in regards to what Penn State football is going to be capable of in 2025. And we're going to do our best to answer those here on State of State. So, Justin, let's get right into it. I want to start off with Drew Allar at quarterback. Is Drew Allar the best quarterback in the country entering the 2025 season, in your opinion?
Is he the best? I can't say that confidently, but I mean, he's definitely got to be in the top five. I can't see that. There's just not many quarterbacks that has his skill set, regardless of the outcome of the season. I mean, the outcome of the season, they finished top five. But just from his skill set and what he's shown from a growth potential standpoint from year one to year two, and if you continue to stack that on to year three, definitely think he's definitely arguably the top quarterback in the country going into next year. Just based on, we talk about snap count being one of the main things, and he's had that and played some good football at Penn State. So, yeah, he's definitely one of the top guys in the country.
One of my favorite things about this debate that you see out there's a lot of people that want to knock Drew and some of its recency bias for the game against Notre Dame. Yeah, that wasn't great. It wasn't great for the entire offense, so we'll put it that way. But I think there's a lot of people who begrudgingly are coming to that determination that Drew Allar is potentially the best returning quarterback going into 2025. I think there's a narrative out there. There are people that want to believe Arch Manning, without having really started that many, 2 games, I think last season started, maybe just one, I'm blanking exactly, but very limited experience. Yes, the ceiling, the potential, the name, all those sorts of things are there. I think a lot of people want to anoint Arch Manning before there's been proof and true experience. And that's what Drew has in spades over him and a lot of other quarterbacks that are entering 2025. I've seen some people want to say, oh, Carson Beck, just because, again, of experience at Georgia, now going to Miami, but he's coming off of a major injury to his throwing arm, no less, changing offenses, schools, all that sort of stuff. His Lamborghinis are getting stolen left and right. It's a really tough life right now for Carson Beck. But I think it's pretty reasonable to look at Drew Allar as, at least, like, if you want to have that discussion of best returning starting quarterback in 2025, it's really hard to argue against him. What do you think of those other arguments out there about, like, Beck, Arch Manning? I've heard Mateer, the transfer from Washington State to Oklahoma, but again, that's like wait and see for so many of these quarterbacks.
Yeah, maybe I'm being a stickler just on a professional background of when I rank, but guys, like
Oh, I prefer that. Yeah.
I'm standing on it based on like, evidence that I have. So not having the evidence, but like everything that you're saying, like I said, those guys are arguably, like you can argue Drew's, I guess, superiority to those guys as prospects and players when you talk about, that's why I said like the snap count, his actual tools, what he's been able to do being under the fire. Like he's gone through things that a lot of these guys haven't gone through, right? It's kind of one of the tricks of the NFL draft. Is like, yo, don't give them too much to evaluate. Right now, I think Drew's one of those quarterbacks where we have so much to evaluate that he's taking a little bit more criticism than other quarterbacks when you just have more of that promise and optimism of like, hey, it might be this, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. But like, yeah, he's definitely one of those top guys. But in that mix, a lot of things come into it. Remember, the quarterback piece is a luxury piece, although people try to make it to it's the one position that trumps all. But it's the offensive coordinator, the line, how their play calls and different things of that nature. So within context, that goes into that position. But no, yeah, Drew is a top guy in any of those players that may have even get, touted as having more money or being the first overall pick, different things that come up that way. Like Drew has all the natural abilities and has shown to be able to go through the fire more so than those other prospects.
And I will listen to the arguments for Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee. I will listen to Lenora Sellers at South Carolina. DJ Lagway at Florida certainly has a lot of potential. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, probably neck and neck, if not more experience than Drew Allar at one consistent school. So I give Klubnik his flowers. I think Drew Allar has proven to be safer with the football and more reliable, whereas Klubnik can be erratic, but certainly had a good 2024 season. So we're biased, but I still think I'd take Drew over the field at this point in time as the best returning quarterback heading into 2025. All right, question number 2. What will it take in your mind for the James Franklin is overrated conversation to be put to bed?
What will it take for, how do you put an illogical argument to bed? People are going to argue he's not, I don't think he's overrated. So, to put it to bed is like kind of convincing people that are basing their argument on things that, might have to have some, digging to get to the root cause of calling them overrated. But I guess winning the national championship would be the only thing, and even in that, you can always have something to say. So winning a national championship would be the simple answer.
Yeah, because there's I don't know if you've seen a lot of the discourse about it, but there's the argument that Brian Kelly and James Franklin are the two most overrated coaches in college football right now. Brian Kelly, obviously having had a tremendous amount of success in Notre Dame, but did not capture a national championship, competed for one. And now at LSU, it seemed to have a lot of promise and now kind of on shaky ground there in Death Valley. And a lot of people speculating this could be his last season. So it kind of turning it back to James Franklin, I think that you need to take the opportunity to analyze everything he's had to work on since he stepped foot on campus over 10 years ago and what he was handed, the sanctions, the lack of scholarships, basically utilizing players that were off the street, walk-ons, people nobody wanted at that FBS level, and then slowly building up the infrastructure of this team over time. I think the outsider looking in, and you would understand this much more thoroughly because you worked within those buildings as a coordinator, recruiting coordinator, is that the amount of work it took to get to this point has been monumental. So to have the conversation that Franklin is overrated, yeah, I can understand the fan perspective, but it's like we continue to point towards what he has built, how much the program has grown, how much still has to be done. And it's the Bo Pelini effect. It's like, yeah, say there was a world where James Franklin was no longer the head coach at Penn State, fired or departed under his own terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you going to go get that's better at this point in time? And that's a really tough answer to come up with, in my opinion.
It's funny because I think when we look at, I look at coaches almost like you think of Vince looking at wrestlers, right? Everybody has their own personality traits where you're going to love them or hate them regardless. Like the wins and losses, I think winning a championship is somewhat of outside of Nick Saban, like in this era, is a little bit of a shooting star, right? Like everything kind of aligning, and it can happen in different programs. So like I can't just put it in a vacuum and look at like, oh, wins, losses versus this top team versus that team. There's so many different variables that you have to judge. And I have a lot of respect for coaches, even though I give coaches, I probably judge and evaluate coaches the harshest, but it's because I have the most respect for the job that they do have to do. So it was kind of hard for me to like rip apart, like not even rip apart or just claim someone is overrated or not doing their job, because like I know how hard that job is and what he came into, even at a place like Penn State. So I think driving the bus at every ecosystem is completely different, right? Like I got, it's different. They're different movies, right? And it's just like how they're funded, how people watch them. And so, I was getting away from the point, but when you see like the sanctions, I think that's something that we forgot a lot about, right? And getting over that and getting everybody on a transition from a new athletic director, NIL era, all these different types of things. All those things, because I think, it can be simpleton and just say like, all right, head coaches are being judged on national championships. But I think that's kind of contradictory if we want to judge based on everything that Penn State fans lay their hats on. Like we haven't won just that many national championships, right? You talk about the 94, 86, we can keep going back, but it wasn't like people like Penn State was known for winning a whole bunch of championships. It was having success with honor and how they produced players and like having those special guys every 3 or 4 years. Like that's what Penn State was essentially built on. When I was coming up as a recruit, it was like, it was an opportunity to like a sleeping giant. It was never like, oh, this is the national championship place. Like, cause at that time, even then was USC or like there were other places. So this whole idea of like, oh, he has to win a national championship to get over the hump, partially, I think it's kind of bullshit. If we like use the same metrics that we always judge Penn State on, like if you look at the players that, for me, looking at the players that they've produced from high school and then kind of getting to the NFL from on a consistent basis and developing players from a physical standpoint to go high draft picks, have the success when they get into the NFL. And like from the jump, right? You see somebody like a Saquon, or you see somebody like a Jahan Dotson, you see Chris Godwin, like these guys, Mike Gesicki, and guys having like extreme success when they get there. That's a level of development and being prepared from the individual standpoint. I think we can't lose track of that. And I think that sometimes gets swept under the rug. And I can't call that, I can't call that underrated when that is like the job of the CEO of the program. Yes, you have to win national championships and all those good things, but 11-win seasons, top 5. If we're still judging based on the same metrics that we kind of use throughout the Penn State history, we kind of have to look at this as like, a very successful tenure from the player standpoint, program standpoint. Obviously, you have still room to grow, but it's room that Penn State has always needed to grow. So, like, I can't just make it about James Franklin. It's about, again, these whole ecosystems. Just a part of the player.
You could easily make an argument about Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and that's clearly been throw money at the problem and try and build through the transfer portal. And I think it's been pretty well proven that if you try to build 60 to 70% through the transfer portal, you're not going to win. You need to still develop. You still need to recruit and develop your guys and retain them. Retention is now the game. So
if we judge based on retention, it might have 2 top 10 picks this year. Like every year, it's like Penn State's known for having a first round pick or a freakish type of athlete that makes a splash when they get into the NFL. You got Michael Parsons, now you got Abdul coming through the NFL draft door, and like that's just something when you talk about talent acquisition, development, all those different types of things. Now you're just kind of waiting for, I'm not going to say the shooting star, but there's some things like quality control that you probably, when you got to talk about talent acquisition, closing a little bit of gaps, identity, like the nuanced things to kind of make this whole thing, I guess, win a national championship, because we're talking about a top 10, like a consistently top 10 finishing program. So it's like how hard that is. It kind of makes it makes me scratch my head to see like, yo, does anybody understand like what this is? Even players, even former Letterman that complain, like it shows me how ignorant they are to actually how difficult it is to put a product on the field and consistently win in different ecosystems.
It's the classic, you think you know, but you have no idea sort of situation. So. Yeah. All right, next question, and it ties into this. Considering what Penn State's roster will lose in 2026, is 2025 the year to win a national title for the Nittany Lions?
I think they're definitely built for like that 3-year cycle to kind of hit it big, right? I think we kind of misjudged it a couple of years ago when it was Drew's first year, but I think
Yeah.
this is like kind of that cycle. I think the last time that it happened was a COVID year. I think it was 2020 when Micah ended up sitting out. Journey had the heart issue, but I think that was the year when we talked about like bringing in that level of talent when it was getting to its maturation for that kaboom to happen. Just so happened to be COVID, and it kind of all split apart. Since then, I think we trying to regain that. And I think this is that time where the stability that they've had through the program, where everything else in college football has been influx, they've been able to keep pretty consistent roster management in terms of losing players that maybe shouldn't fit in the program and upgrading the bottom of the roster. And then like piecemealing guys coming in. Obviously, there's still some gaps when we talk about the receiver and different things of that nature, but all those other areas, as you're building them up, I think they're getting to, like where they're supposed to be. You talk about Drew coming in as a third-year starter. You got both running backs coming back. You got an experienced secondary, linebackers that have a lot of quality snaps under their belt, and defensive linemen that have coming back for their fifth, sixth year. So when you have that level of depth and maturity in football, it really does shine through. So I think this can be a making of that type of year. But you just gotta make it, gotta win the big games at the end, right?
Yeah, that's all you have to do. It's just got to win the big ones at the end of the season. You have to win the last game of the year, essentially. For me, especially, I don't know how much longer Andy Kotelnicki is with the program. 2025 season, yes. The fact that he's already flirting with head coaching jobs, very strong possibility. 25 is his last year at Penn State. So you have that. You have that continuity with Drew Allar, and then you're losing Singleton, Allen, most of the offensive line. There's a lot of pieces that are going to depart. I don't think Penn State necessarily falls off a cliff in 2026, but you do have to entertain a world where plausibly you have a new starting quarterback and offensive coordinator in 2026 and a new running back room and a new offensive line for the most part. Like offensively, there will be lots of questions. Is Jim Knowles somebody who's with the program into 26, 27? I know he has a 3-year contract, but the years mean virtually nothing. Who knows? There's too many unknowns. There's too many unproven commodities beyond 2025 for you to reasonably say Penn State should be back in the national title mix in 2026. Kind of have to see what we have in 25, but it does feel like all the chips are pushed to the center for the 2025 season for Penn State to capture a national championship for the first time in nearly 40 years. Okay, another question, and this one was kind of sparked by the comments from Pat Kraft, the athletic director. Will Penn State add a legitimate game-changing wide receiver to the roster before 2025 kicks off? I'm going to answer this for you first. I'm going to say no, because I don't think one's going to hop in the portal. What do you think?
There might be one on the team. You just never know. Guys develop. I mean, I was at Penn State when there was a walk-on receiver who switched sides from DB to receiver, and he became the all-time leading receiver in Penn State history, Deion Butler. So when guys do develop, guys do get an opportunity to hit. Again, these guys aren't stagnant assets. Like they do get better. So like, whether it's a Tyseer Denmark in the offseason, Pete Gonzalez coming back, some guys that came in that the light goes off, those things can happen. So not to say that someone's externally from the program, but it might be somebody internally that the light comes on.
Yeah, Pat Kraft's phrasing was, quote, we have to go get one in terms of wide receiver. So that's why I was kind of like, yeah, I don't think you're going to see that guy in the portal. Again, roster retention is king right now. You're going to see a lot of guys that are like second, third, fourth, fifth on the depth chart hop into the portal after the spring ball period. Spring games might not even really be a thing this year. But
somebody tell them to holler at me. Is anybody in the recruiting staff? You guys need some receivers. I got some guys, some real receivers down in Texas. Holler.
There you go. But yeah, it does feel like it's either in the room right now or you won't see it in the 2025 cycle. I just don't have a tremendous amount of faith in the transfer portal to all of a sudden introduce a alpha, truly elite wide receiver number one for Penn State in a couple of months. And oh my gosh, everything feels great. Kyron Hudson, the transfer from USC. I think there's a lot of promise there. I had some people on the show that have talked a lot about Devontae Ross, and they seem to like what his game is, but that's an unproven commodity as well. Sun Belt, Big Ten, that's a transition. The guys that are already in-house, you mentioned, have a chance to step up with the departures of Wallace and Evans. So it's just kind of the great unknown. But in terms of somebody coming from the portal that's going to just change everything, I feel like that's doubtful.
Yeah.
Sticking with the offense, and this is more of a historical thing. Will Nick Singleton and Katron Allen finish first and second in Penn State's career rushing yards list by the end of 2025?
Yes.
So
based on time.
Right now, for context, Nick is at number 10, 29-12 in terms of yards. Katron's at number 11, 28-77. First and second are Evan Royster, 39-32 at 1, and number 2, Saquon Barkley at 38-43. So, I mean, if they put up roughly 1,000-yard seasons again, which they just did, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would anticipate that. I think they're going to be leaning on those guys pretty heavy this year.
And the follow-up to that, and this is more opinion and feel and nostalgia, are Singleton and Allen a better duo than Franco Harris and Lydell Mitchell?
Out of respect, I'm going to say no.
I think respect is important. 69-71, the years where Lydell Mitchell and Franco Harris were tearing it up. Lydell Mitchell's at number 9, 2,934 yards. Harris is at number 20, roughly 2,000 yards. So, I mean, like, this is just a fun historical conversation, in my opinion, the way that we've seen it. And, like, I think anytime you mention Franco, it's like you're dealing with an icon of the sport and a completely different style of running back than what you're seeing in the modern game. Like, they just don't make those anymore.
Rest in peace, Franco, for sure.
Yeah. But in terms of what Nick and Katron can create, and if there is a national championship as the cherry on top, I think the conversation will ramp up. But at least in terms of getting the stats, feels pretty good that you get Singleton and Allen at 1 and 2 by the end of this.
I agree.
Let's flip to defense. Deny Dennis Sutton continues to put out on social media that his mission is to become the best defensive end in America. In your opinion, is he already, or is he at least in the conversation?
I mean, just based on just the pure physics, I think you have to highlight him whenever you come to a Penn State game to evaluate. So just based on that instance, the table was set for him to make a splash. So with that being said, yeah.
I think there's some killers in the SEC at defensive end. The Stewart kid from South Carolina is otherworldly. I think there's some talents out there that are in his ballpark. And I think the thing I enjoy so much about last season with Deny and Abdul opposite each other is they're just very different athletes. And you have that wingspan and that size that Deny plays with, but that twitchiness and that speed, the power, like the full package is there. I would say Abdul has more of that spark and flash to be able to accomplish some things that Deny cannot, just because of the way they're built. But Deny certainly has the ability, considering he'd be the focal point at defensive end this year, to elevate himself to being, I don't know where he would fall in terms of a draft pick necessarily, but he has to be in the conversation, in my opinion, for at least a top 5 defensive end in America as we stand right now.
I would agree with that.
And this one I think you'll enjoy. Who do you think will be Penn State's defensive MVP of 2025?
Defensive MVP. I don't know.
Can I give you mine?
Go for it.
Zachy Wheatley. And I don't think that's a stretch.
No, splash guy. Yeah.
Even
he makes plays.
And Zane Durant. I think Tony Rojas could be poised to have a big year, was banged up a lot last season, but still played extremely well. I think the linebacker position is going to be important for Penn State this year with Jim Knowles' defense. But Jim Knowles historically loves to play with his primary safety and do some different things and really make them a focal point of how the defense is going to attack you and at least work against you and create turnovers, all those sorts of things. Zachy played his butt off last season, and especially down the stretch in the college football playoff. The departures of Winston and Jalen Reed, it's certainly a void, but getting King Mack in there, Day Lane, getting a lot of experience. And I don't know, just part of me thinks it's going to be Zachy Wheatley that just stands out as somebody who is critical to the defense in 2025.
Well, I think another name to throw in there would be Zion Tracy. With that being said, because he gets a chance to touch the ball, he's shown that he can touch the ball. When he gets it, he has the ability to get jiggy with it. Take it to the house. And when you do that, I mean, have a couple of those splash plays and the way that lockdown U's been playing, I think he's kind of the next up from the standpoint of splash type of DB with the traits and speed and length and all those good things. So inside out ability and punt return, playmaker right and all over him if he can bring it together.
Cam Miller departing the program, transferring to Rutgers, if I remember correctly. AJ Harris, nice season last year. You have depth at corner that I think Penn State is just scratching the surface with in terms of a number of guys. Jalen Kimber obviously going off to the NFL draft. So some voids that have to be filled, but I feel pretty good about the secondary and the defense. And again, I'm just really anxious to see what Jim Knowles wants to do with this group. And I think there will be more information that comes out as spring ball continues. Will there be a blue-white game is a big question. And obviously that's a big hot button conversation right now. A lot of these programs just don't want to show their cards and they don't want to put guys out there. So it does become that conversation of like, all right, well, it is a community event. So what are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the school in terms of getting people together at that point in the year? How do you substitute that or do something kind of like what Ole Miss did where it was more of a fair kind of carnival feel and you have like a slam dunk contest and stuff like that. I have no idea what Penn State's going to do in that department, but that's a little bit of a bummer for me, honestly, Justin. I don't know how you feel, but like the blue-white game was always a really fun experience when like you could actually go outside and see the sun in State College for the first time in months and you get a look at the team and see how they're doing.
I mean, I guess now having a daughter, now that I go to the spring game, it is for the extracurricular activities and the festival outside. So, I mean, if that's just the main attraction, then yeah.
I just want to sit outside a cafe. That's really all I want to do.
I feel it.
Let us know what you guys think of the biggest questions that we addressed for 2025 here. And let us know if there are others that we missed, others that you guys would like answers to. This is about you guys and the biggest questions you guys have that are big in terms of nostalgia, or at least like the here and now. We talked about the wide receivers, James Franklin, Drew Allar, the running backs, all that sort of stuff. Let us know what you guys want to hear about. Get at us in the comment section on YouTube. Hit us up on social media. Thank you so much for tuning in here on State of State.
Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by Bet Online and by Blue White Outfitters.